Hello everyone, today we continue the story of Please Like Me Season 3. Last season, the adorable Joe fell in love with Adnet, who suffers from a mental disorder. In the eyes of the onlookers, they are a very compatible couple, but Adnet's parents never knew their son liked men. So, can Joe and Adnet get past their parents? Let's take a look. Joe's coffee business is becoming more and more successful. He also hatched a lot of baby chicks at home, though there has been no substantial progress between him and Adnet. But Joe takes this opportunity to invite Adnet over for dinner. After the three of them have a happy dinner, Adnet leaves Joe with just a kiss on the cheek and walks away. Tom blames Joe for not being brave enough to get Adnet to stay the night. Joe is also very bitter about this. He can't figure it out. Why wouldn't Adnet want to add a little lubrication to their relationship? On this day, after the three of them have dinner together, Joe and Adnet return home. They kiss passionately on the floor. Joe thought success was just around the corner. However, Adnet apologized again and grabbed his bat and fled, the image of the two of them just now shattering like a bubble. A depressed Joe finds his mom's friends Na and Tom. He wanted to soothe broken hearts and restore faith in them. Afterwards, Joe takes Adnet on a date to a giant lawn maze, but Adnet finds such dates boring. He wants to pick his next date himself. The next night, Adnet prepares candles and wine in a broken house. He pulls on a small white lamp and asks Joe to enjoy a romantic candlelight date with him. Joe spits on Adnet's girlishness like a 16-year-old girl. Adnet walked up to Joe as shyly as a teenager. He gets Joe with a deep kiss. Then, the two cannot help but untangled in the river of love. Each other's love. Finally, on this night, they break through to something substantial. But after a night of passion, Joe doesn't contact Adnet for a week. This feeling of being on the verge of separation is disturbing to his heart. That night, a drunken Adnet shows up at Joe's door again out of the blue. He got under the covers and hugged Joe. Joe is like the little kid who has to be coaxed after a fight, twisting his face to the side. Adnet keeps confessing his love for Joe, but Joe acts like he doesn't hear him. He simply ignored Adnet. The next day, naughty Joe wants to put the grown-up hen on Adnet's head. Adnet goes along with Joe's prank. He stood still with his head against the hen, holding his face in his hands, not daring to move. The scene was hilarious. Joe took the opportunity to tell Adnet that I love you, but Adnet, who was still laughing, instantly became overwhelmed. The hen also flew down from his head. He takes a few steps back and doesn't respond to Joe's confession. It struck Joe as outrageous, but Adnet doesn't want to be forced to make love known. The disappointed Joe kicks Adnet out and stands alone in the yard. At night, Joe sits alone at the table. Adnet knocked on the window, signaling him to open the door. Then he turned over the cardboard one by one. He wrote "I'm sorry" and "I love you" on it to make Joe happy. Joe looked at the sincere and cute man in front of him and couldn't help but go up and kiss him. The two men come back into the room and explore each other. The two are back together again. The good life is waving at them. Joe made a great dinner for Adnet. Adnet put his hand in his lap and formally announced to them he plans to come out to his parents on his birthday. Joe and Tom are happy for Adnet's brave move, but to his surprise, Dad calls Joe and sadly tells him that Amy is cheating on him. Joe suggests that Dad come over to his house to relieve some stress. Adnet was just about to rehearse the song she was going to sing on her birthday when her dad came over. The heartbroken dad is overwhelmed by the sincerity of the song. He walks up to Adnet with a father's care. He told the boy that he was proud of Adnet's bravery. Then he hugged Adnet. Adnet smiled happily. Everyone on the field was touched by the warmth of the atmosphere. It takes a lot of courage to admit you're coming out to your loved ones. Adnet is taking a brave first step. Soon, it was the day of the birthday. Adnet's dad, Bruce, thanks Joe and Tom for coming. He asked Adnet to say something of thanks as well. Nervous Adnet glanced at Joe and walked over to his dad. He said something polite and then clenched his hands nervously. His eyes don't dare to look at Mom and Dad, but he still finds the courage to admit to his parents that he has been with Joe. Adnet's mom and brother aren't surprised. They've known for a long time that he likes men, but Bruce is furious when he hears about it, because he felt that his authority as a father was not respected. He angrily pushed the cake to the floor and walked back to his room. The relationship between father and son is like a cake dropped on the floor, instantly dropping to the freezing point. Adnet was kicked out of his home. The gentle mom comforts him and lets him stay at Joe's house for a while. The happy cohabitation begins. The two can't stay together anytime, anywhere, and life is full of the sweetness of love. They went to the bar and danced their hearts out. And Tom meets a new companion, the warm and cheerful Ayla. That morning, Claire suddenly returned from Germany. Predictably, Tom is again faced with emotional choices and complications. Joe's rooster is getting bigger every day. It has reached the age where it is a delicacy on the plate. Joe and Claire decide that on Saturday, they will kill a rooster named Adair. They also made a quarantine house for the rooster and put him on a hunger strike. On Thursday morning, Joe and Adnet were lying in bed. They talk about single parters. The decision to have an open relationship was reached between them. Both parties may have contact with other men while off-site, but it doesn't ruin their relationship. The time has finally come for Saturday. On this day, Joe puts a deer's head into a small hole in the barricade pile to secure it. Then he gently places a deer on the counter. Ayla grabs it by the body to keep it from flying around. Perhaps having spent too much time with the deer, Joe was a little put off. Claire had to end a deer's short life herself. Joe also dropped the kinks. He put the processed chicken in the refrigerator and made a flavorful chicken stew on Sunday. The five were holding hands before eating a deer. They sang a prayer in candlelight for a deer's life and thanked it for its contribution. On this day, Adnet is going to try to move back into his house to test his dad's attitude. After breakfast, Claire tells Joe that she is pregnant, but she doesn't want to have the baby and wants Joe to accompany her to the hospital for an abortion. The doctor gave Claire some medicine. When we got home, Claire, who had taken her medication, was screaming in pain on the toilet. She also vowed that she would never have the slightest relationship with a man again in her life. After it's all over, Joe prepares some fried chicken for a haggard Claire. Claire had thought she wouldn't be upset, but as she spoke, she suddenly burst into tears. She ended a life with her own hands. It makes her feel guilty. Joe can only comfort her. Tears are a good accompaniment to fried chicken. This is the kind of boring joke that only Joe can tell. A day later, Adnet was back. He says Dad tried to come to terms with coming out of the closet in a condescending manner, but he didn't need such false acceptance, only to be genuinely blessed. It looks like Adnet's coming out journey is going to take a while to get through. Shortly after, Adnet went away to a summer math camp. In keeping with the principle of openness, Joe immediately asked a man named Ben home. Joe wants to get Ben something to eat from the fridge to ease the awkwardness of meeting him for the first time. Ben, however, was a little too eager to kiss Joe. The two come into the room and quickly undress to experience the beauty of each other. An open relationship is relaxing for Joe. Not only will Adnet not leave himself, but he will be physically compensated. But Joe seems to have gotten into trouble with a troubled man. In the weeks that followed, Ben called Joe 3 times. He says he's having a brain aneurysm removed and wants to see Joe. Joe had wanted nothing more to do with him, but he still has a soft heart and visits Ben in the hospital. But when he arrives, he's embarrassed and doesn't know what to say to Ben. After eating the ice cream, he left in a hurry. When he got home, Joe smothered himself under the covers. Adnet senses that Joe is a little sad and asks him what happened. Joe guiltily tells Adnet about his affair with Ben. Adnet lifts the covers and hugs Joe to comfort him, saying it's okay. At that moment, Claire bursts in. She invites them to ride the Ferris wheel with her. Seeing them hiding under the covers, she thought the two were doing something indescribable. Adnet rushes to deny it. This is really embarrassing. Afterwards, 5 people went to the observation Ferris wheel to enjoy the scenery. I didn't realize that what had been a pleasant chat had turned into an argument. Adnet grows agitated as he argues with Joe about Ben. He held onto the railing and crouched down to leave noisily. Joe tried to help him. Adnet, however, waves his hand sadly and won't let Joe touch him. But Joe went up and crouched down anyway. Taking Adnet's hand, he looked tenderly into Adnet's eyes. He says they shouldn't fight over Ben's presence. Ben is just one of the millions of people you meet who are there for each other for the long haul. Adnet's agitation gradually stabilized upon hearing this. He chooses to believe Joe. The two kissed each other. The two just made up. Soon Christmas is here, and everyone comes to Joe's house for the holidays. But because of Adnet, accidentally dropped the finished marinara on the floor, and everyone was a little upset. They have been spitting on Adnet. Adnet thought he had spoiled the placid atmosphere and hid out alone. He was very upset. Joe comes out to comfort him. Adnet doesn't think he's a good fit for fake and boring family gatherings. He doesn't really want to move in with Joe anymore. He feels guilty for spilling the brisket and brings up the fact that Ben would have been a better fit for Joe. Joe explained in a hurry. He and Ben didn't have anything going on, but stubborn Adnet wants to go home and be quiet. Joe had no choice but to stop talking. The two kissed each other. Joe turned around and went back into the room. Adnet also got into a car and left. A depressed Joe returns to the house and gives everyone a hard time. He thinks it's them who screwed up the relationship between himself and Adnet. After saying that, he also ignored the other people's discouragement. Joe angrily carries strawberry shortcake and the dog outside. He eats cake on a bench with a despondent look on his face. At this point, Joe really needs to eat something sweet to heal his broken heart. It's been a bad Christmas. The 3rd season ends here. Joe and Adnet's relationship. A new crisis has arisen. Hopefully, next season, they'll be able to get past the outside voices and the internal kinks. In fact, whether it is the same sex or opposite sex, in a relationship outside voices are secondary to the importance of trust in each other. Only when two people have faith in the relationship can they work together hand in hand. I hope we can all cherish the people around us and meet each other better. This is the end of this story. Thank you for your support and interest. We'll see you next time.